Ever had a conversation with your friends and said, this should be a podcast? Well, this is that. Welcome to Bonnerfide Conversations. What is going on, good people, and welcome to another edition of Bonnerfide Conversations. I, of course, am your host, Gerard Bonner, and I am so excited to have you guys rocking with us this week for the podcast. Shout out to all of you who join us from wherever in the world you are. I am very well aware that we have a much larger reach than I might even be able to quantify. And so I'm grateful that you are joining us from wherever in the world you are. However and whenever you're listening to this, it means the world to me that you have chosen to allow us, intentionally or not, to be a part of your daily intake, to be a part of your weekly intake, inspiration, podcast, however you look at it. I am grateful that you are rocking with us. Shout out to those who are brand new. You are brand new to what we do. You found us in some amazing way. And so I hope that what will be shared today will be helpful to you. And if it is, go back and binge watch or binge listen to all of the previous episodes. If you have been with us since day one, man, may the Lord bless you real good. I'm excited that you've been on the journey with us, and it means the absolute world. Do me a favor, share this podcast with your friends and loved ones in your sphere of influence. And then I also need you to rate this podcast wherever you're listening or watching, and leave a comment as well. When you do that, what it does is it allows people like you to be exposed to more content like this. Truth be told, hey, there's a lot of podcasts and there's a lot of content out there that you can engage in. Not all of it is going to stick with you for a long period of time. And so if you're looking for a podcast that's going to come alongside you to provide you inspiration and insight in terms of where you are in life, I think this is the right one. I think this is going to help you in a significant way. So if you've been rocking with us, you know we were off for the last 2 weeks, and it was somewhat unintentional. But in full transparency, man, life has just gotten extra busy. I've been doing some traveling. I have been getting geared up for the summer, and some cool things are happening. And I even debated, do we go on summer break? I could, but there have been some lessons that have been learned in very real time that I just was like, man, I need to talk about this, because I feel like I'm never the only one in these situations. I'm not the only one dealing with what happens in this new season. I'm not the only one who has been rocking in transition, and I'm not the only one who has moved from one season to another and now figuring out, how do you navigate this new season? So I said, let's just go ahead and continue what we're doing. I don't know, we might take a break sometime during the summer, but right now my intent is to just kind of keep on going, because I think this is as therapeutic and helpful for me as it is for you. So with that said, if you saw the title, it's going to deal with friendship. And I say it's going to because the title may change at some point. But in my mind, I'm thinking about the TLC legendary single, What About Your Friends? Are they going to stand around? Are they going to be low down? Like, are they going to show up? What are your friends going to do? Now, I tend to talk about situations and scenarios that I think are evergreen, that I think are things that you are either dealing with, could be dealing with, just dealt with, and may need language for. So before I fully dig into the friendship conversation, I want to just kind of take you along the ride with me to some of the things that I have been experiencing and some of the lessons that I've been learning. So if you follow me on the socials at all, you know that, and I don't talk about all of the things that I get to do. On occasion, I do. And I'm realizing sometimes I talk about it later than when it actually happens. Because one of the things that I'm starting to value is actually living in the moment. I've spent so much time trying to capture moments that I don't actually engage in and live in those moments. And so I've had the opportunity over these last few weeks or maybe a month or so to really engage in some moments that either I captured to share later or I didn't even capture at all, just because it was more important to actually engage in the moment. And that could be a lesson for some in this socially driven age where it's as though if it didn't happen on the gram, it didn't happen. I want to caution you to not subscribe or ascribe to that particular theory. Your entire life does not have to be ruled by an algorithm. Everything that happens isn't necessary for the sake of content. There are some things that need to happen that you need to hold near and dear to your heart. There are things that are sacred that should never make their way for public consumption, simply because the people will never understand the full gravity of what certain moments mean to you. I'm going to give you a for instance. So recently I had the opportunity to hang out with my good friends at Ashe Wrestling. Shout out to Darius Lockhart and the entire crew there in Charlotte. And we do come from across the country to connect there. And I will tell you, I was gone from there for about 6 months or so. Just couldn't make certain things work out travel wise, but we were able to do it again back in May. And I have to tell you, that experience meant so much to me on so many levels. I nearly cried walking in there, going through the entire experience, reconnecting with the people, wondering, as some who take time off in pro wrestling or are away in pro wrestling from a promotion, they always wonder, hey, will the people remember? Will the people care? Does it matter? And I very much felt as though, man, my presence matters. My absence matters. And I just want to pause right there, because if you're not in environments where your presence nor your absence matters, you need to change environments. Let's just rip the band-aid off. Change environments. I believe that so many of us are trying to prove ourselves to certain spaces that if they'll just approve us, if they'll just act as though they miss us, it'll matter. No, I don't want an act. If I'm gone, no matter what the reason, you need to miss me. If you don't miss me, then my presence didn't matter in that space. And if my presence nor my absence matters, then yeah, let's just be gone. Let's not continue to fool ourselves. And this season of my life has taught me that I can no longer afford to fool myself. Okay, calm down. Um, I, I have to be honest about that, because the truth of it is I've realized that for the lion's share of my life, I have been fooling myself relative to my importance in the worlds of other people and their importance in my world. Let me explain both of those statements. My importance in their world, this feeling like, hey, if I sacrifice X, Y, and Z, it will matter to them. They'll show up, they'll say this, they'll recognize the significance of the sacrifice. I can't tell you how many times over the years that I have sacrificed my time, my energy, my talent, my finance for a person or for a group of people who didn't even recognize it. They didn't even acknowledge it. It didn't matter to them. And so after doing that, at some point, you've got to recognize, okay, first of all, why am I making this sacrifice? Why am I willing to take my time and sacrifice it for people who won't even acknowledge it? Now, listen, not everybody's going to throw you a ticker tape parade every time you do something. And I'm not suggesting that as an expectation. What I am saying is you need to know why you do what you do more than anybody else. So if you are doing something for the sake of a response and a reaction, then you could be doing it for the wrong reason. If you are doing it so that they will say you're a great friend, you're a great brother, you're a great parent, you're a great spouse, if you are doing what you are doing for that reason, you run a significant chance of experiencing disappointment. Here's why: because most humans are not wired to recognize sacrifice. Most are wired to recognize their sacrifice, but not the sacrifice of others, which is why it is often very difficult for children to acknowledge what parents are doing. Certainly at certain ages, you can't expect them to do that. But when you become adults, is when you start recognizing, wait, my parents had to sacrifice quite a bit. And you only recognize that because your experience as an adult has changed from when it was as a child. Now, I say all of this to say that you have to really examine your motives. What is the why behind the what? Why are you doing what you are doing? And so, if you find yourself in spaces where your presence nor your absence seems to matter, run, Forest, run. Let me say it again: run, Forest, run. Because in that space, you were merely a placeholder. You were a seat filler. This sounds like some really hard gospel right now, but it's the reality of what some of us are dealing with or have dealt with. If you've been there, well, first of all, in spaces like, your employment, where if you're gone, they miss what you do, but they don't miss who you are. And ultimately, when you leave there, they might throw you a party, but they're obligated to replace you or at least attempt to. If you've been in a friend setting, a community of some sort, and you're suddenly not there anymore, do people recognize you being absent? And if they don't, how do they respond? Right? Some of them will, go, oh my God, they're gone. But most will end up having to fill that void one way or another. I hate to even mention this, but it's true. Even in church settings, do the people in your faith community recognize? How long does it take them to recognize when you're not present? Are you in a space that's so large that it takes you about 3-4 months before you realize, hey, where is so and so? Where they used to be here, I don't see them anymore. How long does it take you to recognize that? And how long is it before people recognize that you aren't in a space? If it takes too long, yeah, you probably shouldn't be there because you may have been merely another number. When people are so stuck on numbers that's all they report. They don't report, hey, so and so was missing and I miss their energy. I miss what they bring to the table. Nah, we had 500 people here today, and man, what a time. Guys, you are more than a number. You are more than a license plate. You are more than a statistic. You're a human being with feelings, with contributions, and you just need to be in communities that recognize that. And you need to recognize the communities that are not wired for that. Yes, we all would love to work at a job where they care about every single instant in our lives, but that's not the responsibility of your job. Your job is to do whatever it is that you do. And at that employer, they are responsible for running their business, right? Like, let's not confuse that. Some of us leave jobs because, man, they don't value me. Now, yes, you should be valued, but you need to also have an accurate assessment of what value looks like. Now, all of that to say, all of that to say that it was an amazing moment in time with my friends in Ashe Wrestling, knowing that I've been missed and I missed them. And it felt like a beautiful family reunion. And we had a wonderful time. So I got to enjoy that, spend time there. I got to attend an NBA game. Well, two NBA games, but not just any NBA games. I got to attend during the playoffs and even the Western Conference Finals. So let me just talk about this for a little bit, because those who know me know primarily that, you guys know me for pro wrestling. I love pro wrestling. It is my all-time favorite sport. But what most of you don't know is that while I certainly have always been in love with the sport of pro wrestling, I was a huge basketball fan. Huge. Like my video games were basketball video games. I knew players and stats and all of the things, and I could have a very intelligent conversation about basketball with you. Shout out to the San Antonio Spurs, who, whether they realize it or not, and I don't know if any of them will ever hear this podcast, but they reignited my love for basketball. And in a short period of time, I can tell you about players and stats and all of the things. Here's why I mention that. Not as a flex, because it's not, but what it is a recognition that you get the opportunity to discover and uncover new things. Here's part of the problem. Well, let me take a break. No, let's just continue the conversation. I was going to take a break, but let's keep going. Here's the reality of it. The reality is you deserve the opportunity to grow, to flourish, and to learn new things. And what can often happen is sometimes people will pigeonhole you and say, oh, this is what you've always done. This is what you've always liked. Well, I got exposed to something new and I found out that I liked it. You deserve that. One of the fun tasks, and I don't even want to call it a task, but one of the fun experiences that I get to have with my son is trying to expose him to new foods. He, very much like his dad, has figured out what he likes and rocks with that and will eat that until the cows come home. But for your experience to grow, your palate has to grow. And that means you have to be open to new experiences, new foods. And he'll discover, well, hey, I now like this. There was one time he said his favorite color was blue. Now his favorite color seems to be purple. All kinds of things can influence that, right? But kids get the opportunity to discover and learn new things, get new appetites. You as an adult get to do the same. And I want to encourage you, open yourself up to the possibility of new experiences. Open yourself up to a new appetite. Open yourself up to experience something you haven't experienced before. I want to say this. You, my friends, have not experienced the best portion of your life yet. Keep living. Keep loving. You've not experienced the best experiences that you will have. There is a trip that you have not taken yet that you need to take that's going to open up your world to a whole new space. Shout out to the late Peebo Bryson, a whole new world, right? Some of us are about to experience that when we are willing and able to say, let's try something new. Let's take a new route to work. Let's eat something different for lunch. Let's go to a different restaurant. Let's try a new experience. I tried something that I had never tried before. I actually watched a basketball game at a sports bar. Who is this? It's a new experience, and I enjoyed it. So here's the thing. Don't rob yourself of new opportunities just because the community you might be a part of isn't accustomed to that. Hey, try something new. You deserve to do that. As you are learning and growing and evolving, here's the thing that happens. You discover suddenly some of the things you liked, you may not like anymore. You may discover that some of your appetite was shaped by the season you were in. So, for example, there are certain foods you may have enjoyed, but you enjoyed those foods not knowing why. You gained a taste or an appetite for those foods because financially, that's all your parents could get to you, or that's all you could afford for a season. But as your finances begin to change, your appetite changes. Suddenly you start discovering, hey, I want to try a different kind of food. I want to try Indian food, or I want to try Thai food, or I want to go to a five-star restaurant. I want to learn what a Michelin rating means, right? Like you start learning these things. And I think so many of us have lived in survival mode that the idea of actually having excess, having extra, having more than enough feels foreign. For some of us, the idea that you actually have money left after you paid your bills is like, wait, what? What do I do with this? You mean to tell me I can actually go out to a restaurant and have an upcharge, right? I can go to the restaurant at any hour of the day and pay for it. Like that's a new feeling for some people. And I want to tell you that after all that you've been through, you deserve to experience that. You deserve to experience what life looks like on the other side of struggle, what life looks like on the other side of survival. Let me tell you something. There are people in the world who unfortunately don't want to see you do more than survive. They just want to see you barely exist. And those are broken people. Those are unhealthy people. Those are likely unhappy people, which means you probably need new people. So, with that said, I've been learning a lot. I'm condensing these lessons, by the way, and I hope that, it feels like you're gaining a lot because I'm trying to share a lot here. So, when it comes to friends, if there's something that the last year and a half has taught me in my life, it is that sometimes we have people sitting in seats that were there to navigate you through a certain season, but really aren't designed to walk with you into your next season. Now, I know depending upon the circles you operate in, you hear a lot about seasons and people and revolving doors and the like. I'm one of those people who believes you can be a lifer when it comes to friends. Like, I just believe that you should be able to walk through multiple seasons with people. But the reality of it is that is not necessarily true. Not everyone has the ability to walk through every season with you. There are some people who you connected with just because you guys went to the same high school. Matter of fact, let's go back. Some of you went to the same elementary school together. You were in the same class. And so you then became friends. And I put that in air quotes for those who are listening. And then as life began to progress, you discovered, well, suddenly the person who was my best friend in the first grade is not my best friend in the fourth grade. And then when we moved from being in the same classroom for 6 hours a day to now alternating classes in middle and high school, you now get connected with different people and you're in different scenarios. And suddenly you find out, wait a minute, my best friend from the first grade and the fourth grade isn't necessarily my best friend in seventh grade or 10th grade. Then you graduate and you're like, where am I going to go? Now I'm going to a university or a college, perhaps in a different city or a different state. Your friend groups change. I remember my dear best friend from high school who was an amazing person, like big fan. We went to college. We went our separate ways. He went north, I went south, and we lost touch. I was able to reconnect with him during the pandemic, ironically. And we reached out and talked for a little bit, but we were never able to keep the conversation going. And it made me wonder, like, why? Well, life moves on, life changes, and the ability of the people who are in your world, that too changes. Some of them are able to help walk with you through one season, and some of us develop loyalty to those people because they've walked through seasons with us. The question, though, is are they able to walk through your now and your next? And sometimes We have brought people into new seasons who are no longer equipped to continue the journey with us. Sometimes it's painful when you discover that. It's painful because you were expecting a memo. I'm the type of person that if you can't do a thing, be upfront with me and tell me. Don't commit to it and then decide afterwards, oh no, upon further review, no, I can't do that. No, I'd like for you to be aware enough to where when I bring it to you in the first place, you can say, no, I can't do that. Okay? Like I'm easy like that. I want to make sure that I'm not putting too much on you. But after a while, you begin to develop relationships with people where you've gone through quite a bit and you're able to share a lot. And so there then becomes the expectation that, hey, this is going to be my ace. This is going to be the one. These are going to be the ones. And then you get some scenarios that require a little bit of weight. And suddenly you discover that they can't carry it. They keep dropping the ball and dropping you. I'm the type of person, again, I'm a loyalist. I want to rock with you, and I'm going to always look for you, the redemptive quality in you. At some point, I have to actually believe what you're presenting to me. And I'm just going to be very transparent. I am guilty of people showing me who they are and me not wanting to believe it because I believe you can change. I believe you can grow. And I believe oftentimes that it'll be my fault. I don't want my view and my vision to be wrong. So I'll take certain things on the chin because, like, nah, they didn't mean it that way. Nah, they were absent. They didn't mean that. No, they didn't. No. But at some point, you have to recognize that if they're constantly absent, if they can never handle any weight, well, maybe they aren't as weighty as you thought they were. Maybe they didn't have it. And here's the thing, some of us live in these lands of absolutes where we're like, well, they were never this way. No, I don't believe that. I believe that some people really were able and capable at a certain space to walk you through certain things. But they also held you at a distance, and you were so involved in what you were doing. You were so close to it that you couldn't see the distance they were holding you at. And here's also why you couldn't see the distance, because you didn't create distance. You tried to be close. You tried to hold things. You tried to be the one that would check on them even when they didn't check on you. You were the person that offered the resources of the best of who you are to them while they gave you scraps. You did it because it's a reflection of you. And in some cases, they tried to tell you that you changed. I think you owe it to yourself. And I saw someone post this the other day that if you need to make a change in relationships because of how they are not showing up for you, you should do that. You have the right to do that. Because here's the thing, many people aren't brave enough to just tell you they're going to exit your life. They're going to just pull back. They're going to hope you stop calling on them to a point. And here's that point. They want you to call on them when they want access to what you're doing. But see, access, in order to get that, you have to earn that. You don't just get access on the strength of your name. And you don't just get access on the strength of your position. You get access because you have earned that level of access. And sometimes people are behaving in ways that require a revoking of said access. You don't get to view me from an avenue that is not the best of me if I only view you as the best of you. No, no. We need level playing fields. We need to make sure that we are all in the same way. We're not going to sit up here and keep fooling ourselves and keep telling ourselves, no, that's not, no. Sometimes you got to call a spade, and sometimes that's a very difficult lesson. But there's a point when you begin to realize, oh my gosh, I thought these people were going to be there for me and they aren't. What do you do? How do you respond? Now, I know some people who, at the point that you realize, wait a minute, this friend is not being a friend, this spouse is not being a spouse, these people are not doing what I expect them to do. I know some people who like to burn the whole city down. Like, I'm not going to ever be friends with anybody. Everybody goes away. I think you have to learn how you handle these things. Some of these moments do require a conversation. There are some moments when you're going to break away from a person, a community, a job, and it requires a conversation. And that conversation oftentimes is a courtesy, and a reflection of the amount of time that has been spent in that relationship. I think those conversations need to be resolute. Those conversations need to really reflect who you are and who you've become. And you need to walk into those conversations with a desired goal. Don't walk in open ended. Walk in knowing what you want this conversation to produce. And then there are other moments that simply don't require conversations. If you recognize that something is bad and that it's toxic, you may just need to leave. So if there is a hazard sign on it, you don't need to have a conversation that says, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just recognizing that these are hazardous materials. I will not be walking through here as I don't want to step onto a landmine or ingest poisons. No, you just go away. You have to decide that. And I want you to understand that you do have autonomy. You do get to decide who comes and goes in your life. You do get to decide who sits in these seats, because here's the problem. If you have somebody sitting in a seat that's actually reserved for someone who is qualified, and that person is not, they're taking up necessary space and they're costing you. I recall, and I'm going to get ready to wrap it up. I recall being in a scenario and being in a few scenarios where I needed help. I needed assistance. Um, I needed advice. I needed resources. I needed direction. I needed help. First things first, if you are connected to a group of people who have a hard time providing assistance, if they can never be around, if they are just every time you ask for something, you feel like you are just throwing the weight of the world on them, that's not your group. Okay. Now, granted, there are some things that you do have to do yourself, but I do think we were created for community. So you need to be in a community that has the ability to actually assist, the community that actually has wisdom. You know, I was telling somebody the other day that you may not be able to show up physically for everything, but you can provide a resource. You can provide an answer. You can provide something that at least makes me feel like you are present. So I think you have to decide, as you're determining who can walk with me in this new season, who can handle the weight of who I am. You need to decide and assess who's in those seats. And are those seats being occupied by capable people? Or have these people showcased, here's a word that we don't like to talk about, the kind of character that says, no, they shouldn't be here. Just because they're popular, just because they're charismatic, doesn't mean that they have character. Charisma and character are two very different things. And I need us not to be so moved by the charisma of people that we negate their character. Some people aren't walking with the level of character needed to accompany you into the next season of your life. And as a matter of fact, their lack of character could be holding you back from the great things that the Creator has intended for you to experience. So, as I close, let me remind you that you, my friends, have freedom. Freedom to choose, freedom to decide who should walk in and out of your life, freedom to enjoy new experiences, freedom to go and do different things. And if you're around a group of people who don't believe in that level of adventure and who aren't aligned with who you are, it may be time to find a new group of people. I'm not one who likes to change friends a whole lot, but I do recognize that the people that are walking with me in this season are a bit different than some who've walked with me in previous seasons. Not because I'm trying to be extra or different, but because I'm realizing who's showing up for me when the rubber meets the road. And if they can't show up, then you don't get to benefit when my favor shows up either. You don't get to walk into doors that are opened for faith. The doors of favor are reserved for the faithful. Let me say it again. The doors of favor are reserved for the faithful. So don't expect to be the plus one. Don't expect to, get to eat off of the favored table when you weren't faithful over a few things, when you couldn't show up when you were needed, when there was always an excuse. Well, then all of a sudden the access to favor gets denied because favor is reserved for the faithful. Be faithful, friends. Be a faithful friend who shows up. And you'll be surprised the favor that you get to experience. All right, I got to go, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. Please leave a comment here. Let me know what you think about today's episode and how it's impacted you. I am giving some very serious thought to doing a live episode where I take your questions. If you're interested in that, please let me know. And we'll figure out how we can do that. I think it's going to be actually very easy if you guys are interested in doing that. If you got topics you'd like for me to discuss, let me know that as well. Listen, I am honored that we get to share this time together, and I am so grateful that we continue to do life together. And I'll tell you what, there are great things waiting for both you and I, as long as we can continue these Bonnerfide conversations.
Ever had a conversation with your friends and said, this should be a podcast? Well, this is that. Welcome to Bonnerfide Conversations. Yeah!